When you make the decision to stop talking to a man, it is not just an act of silence. It is a profound shift in the dynamic between you and him. Communication, after all, is the lifeblood of human relationships. To withdraw is to disrupt the natural flow of interaction. For a man, this withdrawal can trigger a cascade of reactions, not all of which he will understand immediately. He may find himself standing at the edge of an emotional cliff, gazing into an unfamiliar abyss. And that abyss is not just the absence of your voice, it is the absence of validation, of reassurance, of the steady presence that your communication once provided. This silence forces him into a confrontation not with you, but with himself. In the initial moments, a man might respond with denial. He may convince himself that your silence is fleeting, a temporary glitch in the otherwise smooth machinery of your relationship. He will replay old conversations in his mind, searching for a clue or a sign he missed, hoping to decipher the reason behind this sudden change. Denial is a comfortable place for the human psyche to retreat to when faced with discomfort, and it will be his first shield against the weight of your silence. However, this denial cannot last indefinitely. Eventually, reality will penetrate even the most robust defenses of his mind, forcing him to confront the undeniable truth you have chosen to disengage. As the reality of your silence begins to settle, a man may find himself gripped by confusion. This is not the confusion of a lack of understanding, but rather the disorientation that comes from an upheaval in the expected order of things. For most men, communication, even in its simplest forms, serves as an anchor. It grounds them, providing a sense of predictability and control. Without it, the waters of his mind become tumultuous. He may try to reach out, either overtly or subtly, seeking to reestablish that lost connection. This outreach is not always a conscious act. It can manifest in unexpected ways: a casual text, a passing comment through a mutual friend, or even a sudden and uncharacteristic post on social media. All of these are attempts to bridge the chasm created by your silence. But as time stretches on, and if your silence remains unbroken, his confusion may evolve into frustration. Frustration is a natural response to unmet expectations and the inability to alter an uncomfortable situation. This frustration, however, is not solely directed at you. It often becomes an internalized struggle. A man may wrestle with his own feelings of inadequacy, questioning whether he has somehow failed you or himself. This self-doubt can be both a burden and a catalyst. For some men, it becomes a weight they cannot bear, pulling them further into a cycle of despair. For others, it becomes the spark that ignites a deeper self-reflection. In the process of self-reflection, a man will begin to question the foundation of his actions and motivations. He will ponder the role he played in the breakdown of communication. This stage is neither swift nor straightforward. It is a messy, convoluted journey that forces him to confront aspects of himself he may have long ignored. He will dissect his words, his actions, and even his inactions, attempting to piece together a coherent narrative that explains your silence. And in doing so, he will come face to face with his own vulnerabilities. These vulnerabilities, often hidden beneath layers of bravado or indifference, will now stand exposed. This exposure can be deeply unsettling, but it is also profoundly humanizing. As he grapples with these vulnerabilities, a man may find himself at a crossroads. On one path lies the temptation to retreat into anger or resentment. Anger, after all, is a convenient shield against pain. It allows him to deflect blame onto you, to cast himself as the victim of an unjust silence. But anger is a hollow victory. It offers no resolution, no growth, only a temporary escape. On the other path lies the opportunity for growth. This path requires humility, the willingness to acknowledge mistakes, and the courage to seek understanding rather than absolution. Not every man will choose this path, but for those who do, the journey can be transformative. In the absence of your words, a man may also begin to rediscover the power of his own voice. He may realize that communication is not a one-way street, that it requires effort and intention on his part as well. This realization can lead him to reevaluate his approach to relationships, not just with you, but with others as well. He may come to understand that silence, when wielded deliberately, is not just a tool of disconnection, but also an invitation for introspection. It is a challenge, a call to rise above complacency and engage with the deeper questions of connection and commitment. What a man will ultimately do when you stop talking to him depends on who he is at his core. Some men will falter, unable to navigate the labyrinth of their own emotions. Others will rise, emerging from the experience with a renewed sense of clarity and purpose. Your silence, intentional or not, becomes a crucible in which his character is tested. It strips away the superficial layers, revealing the essence of his being. And while this process may be painful for both of you, it is also profoundly illuminating. Silence has a way of magnifying the unspoken truths in a relationship. It brings to the surface what words often obscure: the fears, the insecurities, the unfulfilled desires. A man faced with this silence must decide whether to confront these truths or to bury them deeper. This decision is not an easy one, nor is it always made consciously. But it is in this decision that his true nature is revealed. Will he use this moment as an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to strive for something better? Or will he retreat into the safety of ignorance and indifference? Through your silence, a man may learn the value of what he has lost. He may come to see that communication is not just about exchanging words, but about sharing a part of oneself. It is about vulnerability, honesty, and the willingness to engage, even when it is uncomfortable. Your silence can teach him that relationships are not a given, they are a choice made daily through actions and words. And in this realization, he may find the strength to become a better version of himself, not just for you, but for his own sake. When a man faces the absence of your voice, he is forced to confront the presence of his own thoughts. In this solitude, he may discover truths he had long ignored. He may realize that silence, though painful, is also a profound teacher. It teaches patience, resilience, and the importance of meaningful connection. It teaches that words are not to be taken for granted, that they hold the power to heal or to hurt, to build or to destroy. And in this realization, he may come to see that your silence was not an end, but a beginning, a chance for growth, for understanding, and for change. As time continues to stretch in the absence of your voice, a man will inevitably enter a phase of questioning. This phase is marked by a deep internal dialogue where he tries to reconcile the dissonance between his expectations and the reality he now faces. He may ask himself why the silence feels so heavy, why it lingers in his mind like a weight that cannot be lifted. These questions are not just about you or the relationship, they are about him. They force him to examine the patterns of his behavior, the choices he has made, and the consequences of those choices. In this sense, your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back to him the truths he may have been unwilling to confront. During this questioning phase, a man may also experience moments of regret. These moments often arise when he begins to see, with greater clarity, the opportunities he may have squandered. He will think about the things he could have said but didn't, the actions he could have taken but chose not to. Regret is a powerful emotion, one that can either paralyze or propel a person forward. For some men, it becomes a source of self-pity, a loop of negative thoughts that leads nowhere. But for others, regret can be a catalyst for change. It can motivate them to take responsibility for their actions and strive to become better. One of the most profound realizations a man may come to during this time is the importance of respect, both for you and for himself. Your decision to stop talking to him might highlight areas where he has failed to show you the respect you deserve. This recognition can be painful, as it often involves acknowledging behaviors or attitudes he has long justified or ignored. But it is also a necessary step toward growth. Respect, after all, is the foundation of any meaningful relationship. Without it, even the strongest connection will eventually crumble. By recognizing this, a man may begin to understand that your silence was not an act of punishment, but a boundary, a way of asserting your own worth. In the silence, a man may also discover the value of time. Relationships often exist within the framework of shared moments, a timeline of experiences that weave two lives together. When communication ceases, so too does the creation of these shared moments. A man will feel the absence of this continuity, the disruption of a rhythm he may have taken for granted. This awareness can be both unsettling and enlightening. It reminds him that time is finite, that the moments he spends with someone are not guaranteed and must be cherished. This realization, though difficult, can lead to a deeper appreciation of the connections he holds dear. As the days turn into weeks, a man may begin to wonder about your life beyond the silence. He will picture you in his mind, imagine what you are doing, who you are with, and how you are feeling. This mental exercise, though seemingly simple, is deeply significant. It forces him to consider your perspective, to step outside of his own experience and empathize with yours. This shift from self-focus to other focus is a critical part of emotional maturity. It is a recognition that the world does not revolve around him, that your feelings, needs, and desires are just as valid as his own. Empathy, however, is not an easy skill to develop. For many men, it requires unlearning years of societal conditioning that equates vulnerability with weakness. To truly empathize, a man must be willing to confront his own fears and insecurities. He must acknowledge that he does not have all the answers and that his perspective is limited. This humility, though challenging, is essential for meaningful growth. It allows him to see your silence not as an attack or a rejection, but as an opportunity to understand you better. In this way, your decision to stop talking becomes a gift, a chance for him to grow, not just as a partner, but as a person. The silence you impose may also lead a man to reevaluate his priorities. In the absence of your voice, he may begin to question the things he has placed above the relationship. Was it his career, his hobbies, his ego? Whatever it may be, he will now see it in a new light. The things that once seemed so important may start to feel trivial in comparison to the connection he has lost. This shift in perspective can be transformative. It can inspire a man to realign his life, to make choices that reflect his true values rather than societal expectations or fleeting desires. Another significant aspect of this process is the role of pride. For many men, pride can be a stumbling block, preventing them from reaching out or admitting their mistakes. It is easier, after all, to stand firm in silence than to risk the vulnerability of an apology. But as the weight of your absence grows heavier, pride begins to feel less like a shield and more like a prison. A man who is willing to confront his pride will find freedom on the other side of freedom that comes from embracing humility and seeking reconciliation. This is not an easy journey, but it is a necessary one for any man who wishes to grow and build meaningful connections. In the quiet of your absence, a man may also come to understand the depth of his own emotions. Men are often taught to suppress their feelings, to appear strong and stoic no matter the circumstances. But silence has a way of breaking down these barriers. It forces a man to sit with his thoughts and feelings, to acknowledge the pain, confusion, and longing that he may have tried to ignore. This emotional reckoning is not a sign of weakness but of strength. It takes courage to face one's own heart, to admit that something is missing and that the void cannot be filled by distractions or superficial comforts. Through this process, a man may come to see the power of forgiveness, not just for you, but for himself. He may realize that holding on to resentment, whether toward you or his own shortcomings, only prolongs the pain. Forgiveness is not about forgetting or excusing what has happened. It is about releasing the grip of anger and choosing to move forward. In forgiving himself, a man can let go of the guilt and shame that may have been holding him back. And in forgiving you, he can open the door to healing and reconciliation, even if that reconciliation takes the form of acceptance rather than reunion. As a man wrestles with the void left by your silence, he may begin to understand the true nature of dependency within relationships. Dependency is often viewed in a negative light as a sign of weakness or lack of autonomy. But when a man stops hearing from you, he may come to realize that dependency, in its healthiest form, is simply an acknowledgement of the importance of connection. It is the recognition that human beings are not meant to exist in isolation, that relationships provide meaning, comfort, and purpose. This realization can be both humbling and enlightening. It forces him to confront the delicate balance between independence and interdependence, a balance that is often misunderstood or overlooked. In this period of silence, he may also become acutely aware of the habits and routines that once defined your interactions. He will notice the absence of the small gestures that seemed inconsequential at the time, but now loom large in their absence. Perhaps it was the way you always asked about his day, or the way your laughter filled a room. These seemingly minor moments now take on a new significance, serving as reminders of the connection you shared. In their absence, he will begin to understand that relationships are built not just on grand gestures, but on the accumulation of these small, consistent acts of care and attention. As this awareness deepens, he may find himself grappling with a sense of loss that is difficult to articulate. This loss is not just about you as an individual, but about the version of himself that existed within the relationship. Relationships often serve as mirrors, reflecting back to us parts of our identity that we may not see on our own. In losing you, he loses that reflection, that sense of being understood and validated. This loss can be profoundly disorienting, leaving him to question who he is outside the context of the connection you once shared. This process of self-discovery is not easy, but it is essential for his growth. The silence you impose also forces a man to confront his own expectations about relationships. Many men enter relationships with preconceived notions about how they should unfold, often based on societal norms or past experiences. When communication ceases, these expectations are thrown into question. He is forced to reconsider what he thought he knew about connection, commitment, and love. This reevaluation can be uncomfortable, as it requires him to let go of outdated beliefs and open himself to new possibilities. But it is also an opportunity for growth, for developing a more nuanced and mature understanding of relationships. In the absence of your voice, a man may also come to understand the power dynamics that were present in your relationship. Silence has a way of leveling the playing field, of shifting the balance of power in subtle but significant ways. He may begin to see how his actions or inactions contributed to the dynamic you shared. This awareness can be both enlightening and uncomfortable, as it forces him to confront aspects of his behavior that he may have ignored or rationalized. But it is also an opportunity for him to take responsibility for his role in the relationship, to acknowledge his mistakes and strive for better in the future. As he navigates these complex emotions, a man may also begin to see the value of patience. Silence is not something that can be resolved quickly or easily. It requires him to sit with his discomfort, to resist the urge to fill the void with distractions or superficial solutions. This patience is a form of discipline, a way of training himself to tolerate uncertainty and ambiguity. In learning to be patient, he also learns to be present, to focus on what is happening in the moment, rather than constantly seeking resolution or closure. This presence is a valuable skill, not just in relationships, but in all aspects of life. Through this process, a man may come to understand the importance of reciprocity in communication. Relationships thrive when both parties are willing to give and receive, to listen and be heard. If your silence is a response to feeling unheard or undervalued, he may begin to see how his own behavior contributed to the breakdown in communication. This realization can be painful, as it requires him to confront his own shortcomings. But it is also an opportunity for growth, for developing a deeper appreciation of the effort and vulnerability that true communication requires. In the absence of your voice, a man may also become more attuned to his own inner dialogue. Without the external input of your words, he is left alone with his thoughts, his fears, and his hopes. This solitude can be both daunting and liberating. It forces him to confront the parts of himself that he may have been avoiding, the insecurities, the doubts, the unresolved emotions. But it also gives him the space to explore his own values and priorities, to ask himself what truly matters to him. This process of self-reflection is not always comfortable, but it is essential for his personal growth. As he continues to navigate the silence, a man may also come to understand the importance of gratitude. It is easy to take things for granted when they are always within reach, but absence has a way of highlighting what was once overlooked. He may begin to see the value of the time and energy you invested in the relationship, the sacrifices you made, and the ways you supported him. This gratitude, though belated, can be a powerful motivator. It can inspire him to approach future relationships with a greater sense of appreciation and respect. What a man does in the face of your silence reveals a great deal about his character. Some men will retreat into anger or denial, unwilling to confront the discomfort of self-reflection. Others will use this experience as an opportunity for growth, for developing a deeper understanding of themselves and their relationships. Your silence, while painful, is not without purpose. It serves as a catalyst, a turning point that forces him to confront the truths he may have been avoiding. And in doing so, it offers him a chance to grow, not just for your sake, but for his own. As the silence stretches on, a man will begin to notice how the absence of your voice echoes into other areas of his life. This is because relationships are not isolated, they intertwine with a man's sense of identity, his habits, and even his worldview. He may find that activities he once enjoyed feel less fulfilling, that conversations with others lack the depth he once shared with you. This emptiness is not necessarily a loss of happiness, but rather a void that demands his attention. It challenges him to re-examine what truly brings meaning to his life and forces him to confront whether he has been living authentically or simply going through the motions. In this period of self-examination, a man may also begin to understand the role of trust in relationships. Trust is not just about fidelity or reliability, it is about the belief that another person values and respects you enough to prioritize honest and open communication. Your silence disrupts the trust, but it also highlights its importance. He may question whether he did enough to build a foundation of trust with you or whether he took it for granted. This questioning is vital because it encourages him to see that trust is not a static quality but a dynamic one that must be nurtured and maintained through consistent effort. The longer your silence continues, the more he is likely to encounter moments of self-awareness that feel both enlightening and humbling. He may realize, for instance, that he has been holding on to habits or beliefs that no longer serve him. Perhaps he relied too heavily on you to manage the emotional labor of the relationship, or perhaps he avoided difficult conversations out of fear or laziness. These realizations, while uncomfortable, are necessary for growth. They force him to confront the ways in which he may have contributed to the distance between you and to take responsibility for his part in the dynamic. In the quiet of his own mind, a man may also begin to explore the idea of vulnerability. Silence can feel like an emotional barrier, and breaking through that barrier requires courage. He must decide whether to risk reaching out to you, knowing that he may face rejection or further silence. This decision is not a simple one, as it requires him to weigh the value of his pride against the possibility of reconnection. If he chooses vulnerability, it is a testament to his willingness to grow, to prioritize authenticity over self-protection. This choice, whether successful or not, represents a significant step in his emotional development. As the days and weeks pass, your silence may also lead a man to reevaluate his understanding of intimacy. Intimacy is often misunderstood as purely physical or romantic, but it is much more than that. It is the closeness that comes from sharing one's thoughts, fears, and dreams with another person. Without your voice, he may begin to realize how much he depended on that sense of closeness, how much it enriched his life. This realization can be both painful and inspiring, as it highlights the depth of what he has lost while also motivating him to seek deeper connections in the future. In the absence of communication, a man may also be forced to confront the concept of accountability. It is easy to deflect blame or avoid responsibility when there is a steady stream of dialogue to distract from deeper issues. But silence removes those distractions, leaving him with only his thoughts and actions to examine. He may begin to see patterns in his behavior that he previously ignored, moments where he could have been more attentive, more honest, or more compassionate. This accountability is not about assigning guilt, but about taking ownership of his choices and recognizing their impact on others. The silence also has a way of amplifying his emotional awareness. Men are often socialized to suppress their emotions or to express them in limited ways, such as anger or frustration. But when faced with the void of your absence, he may begin to access emotions he has long buried: loneliness, sadness, regret, and even hope. These emotions, though difficult to process, are essential for his growth. They teach him that vulnerability is not a weakness but a strength, that acknowledging his feelings is the first step toward understanding and addressing them. As he continues to navigate this emotional terrain, a man may also come to understand the importance of effort in relationships. Your silence serves as a stark reminder that love and connection are not passive states but active processes. They require intention, communication, and the willingness to show up even when it is difficult. If he reflects deeply, he may realize that he could have done more to nurture the relationship, to show you that he valued you and was invested in your happiness. This realization can be a turning point, motivating him to approach future relationships with greater care and commitment. In this prolonged silence, a man may also begin to explore the concept of boundaries, both yours and his own. Boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out, but guidelines that define what is acceptable and respectful within a relationship. Your silence may serve as a boundary, a way of asserting your needs and protecting your emotional well-being. If he respects this boundary, it is a sign of his maturity and his willingness to honor your autonomy. If he does not, it may reveal areas where he still has work to do in understanding the importance of mutual respect. As he reflects on these lessons, a man may also come to appreciate the power of presence. In a world filled with distractions and constant noise, your silence is a reminder of the value of simply being present for yourself, for others, and for the moments that matter. He may realize that he was not fully present in the relationship, that he allowed external factors or internal fears to pull him away from truly connecting with you. This awareness can inspire him to cultivate mindfulness and to prioritize the relationships that bring meaning to his life. As the silence endures, a man may start to reflect on the memories you both shared. These memories, once embedded in the fabric of everyday life, take on a sharper focus in the absence of new experiences with you. He may replay conversations in his mind, dissecting the words spoken and unspoken, searching for clues about what went wrong or what could have been different. The mundane moments, shared meals, walks, or even quiet evenings suddenly feel profound. This retrospective journey is not just about nostalgia, it is a deep dive into understanding the essence of your connection and the reasons for its disruption. The weight of silence often prompts a man to consider the legacy of his actions. Relationships are built on choices, both big and small, and he may begin to see how his decisions shaped the course of your relationship. Whether it was a moment of neglect, a harsh word, or a failure to prioritize you, these instances now stand out with stark clarity. This realization can be painful, as it forces him to acknowledge the times when he fell short of being the partner he aspired to be. Yet this pain also carries the seeds of transformation, as it urges him to strive for better. As time stretches on, a man may also come to understand the role of pride in his behavior. Pride often masquerades as strength, but in the context of relationships, it can be a barrier to connection and growth. Your silence may serve as a mirror, reflecting back to him the ways in which his pride created distance. Whether it was an unwillingness to apologize, a reluctance to show vulnerability, or an insistence on being right, these patterns now stand out starkly. In facing this truth, he has the opportunity to choose humility, a choice that can open the door to deeper understanding and meaningful change. In the quiet void left by your absence, he may also explore the concept of forgiveness. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as an act of absolution, but it is more accurately a process of letting go of resentment, anger, and the burden of past hurts. He may grapple with the question of whether he can forgive himself for his mistakes or whether he can accept the pain that led to your silence. This exploration is not about absolving himself of responsibility, but about finding a way to move forward with integrity and self-awareness. Your silence also challenges a man to confront his fears of rejection, inadequacy, and loss. These fears, often buried beneath layers of bravado or detachment, come to the surface in the absence of your voice. He may realize that his fear of losing you was masked by complacency, or that his fear of emotional vulnerability prevented him from fully opening up to you. By facing these fears, he takes a critical step toward emotional maturity. It is only by confronting what he fears most that he can begin to build the courage needed for meaningful relationships. The absence of communication can also serve as a powerful lesson in the nature of love itself. Love is not merely an emotion, it is an action, a commitment to nurturing the well-being of another person. In the silence, he may begin to see that love requires effort, patience, and a willingness to put the needs of the relationship above his own ego. This realization can be transformative as it shifts his understanding of love from a passive state to an active practice. If he truly values the connection he had with you, this insight may inspire him to approach future relationships with greater care and intentionality. As he continues to reflect, a man may also confront the concept of loss. Loss is an inevitable part of life, but it is one that many people struggle to accept. Your silence may force him to grapple with the reality that some things once lost cannot be regained. This confrontation with impermanence is a profound experience as it highlights the fragility and preciousness of human connections. In coming to terms with this loss, he may gain a deeper appreciation for the people and experiences that bring meaning to his life. The silence may also lead a man to recognize the importance of emotional intelligence. Relationships thrive when both partners are attuned to each other's emotions and able to communicate effectively about their feelings. If he failed to recognize your emotional needs or dismissed your concerns, this realization will weigh heavily on him. It will become clear that emotional intelligence is not a luxury but a necessity for building and maintaining healthy relationships. This awareness can inspire him to cultivate greater empathy, self-awareness, and communication skills in his interactions with others. As time goes on, he may also come to understand the role of gratitude in relationships. Gratitude is not just about appreciating the good times, it is about valuing the connection as a whole, including the challenges and growth it fosters. Your silence may serve as a stark reminder of what he once had, and perhaps took for granted. This recognition can inspire a profound sense of appreciation, not just for you, but for the lessons the relationship has taught him. Gratitude, when deeply felt, has the power to transform how he approaches future relationships, making him more present, attentive, and open-hearted. What a man does in response to your silence reveals the depth of his character and the extent of his growth. Some will choose to numb the discomfort with distractions, while others will lean into the pain, using it as a catalyst for self-discovery and transformation. Your silence is not just an absence, it is an invitation for him to explore his inner world, to confront his truths, and to emerge stronger and more self-aware. Whether or not he chooses to accept that invitation is a reflection of his readiness to grow, not just for the sake of the relationship, but for his own evolution as a person.